We are living in the wealthiest, safest, and most interconnected era in human history. Yet, the world is seething with anger, division, and resentment. Why is democracy retreating, and why are autocrats rising from the ashes? Fareed Zakaria, the renowned CNN host and global thinker, warns that this is not just a temporary glitch. History tells us a terrifying truth. Every great revolution is inevitably followed by a brutal backlash. This book reveals why our cherished progress often betrays us, and what we must understand to survive this age of regression. In his masterpiece, Age of Revolutions, Progress and Backlash from 1600 to the present, Fareed Zakaria takes us on a sweeping journey through 4 centuries of history, from the Dutch Golden Age to the Age of Artificial Intelligence. His central thesis is stark. History is not a straight line of progress. It is a turbulent ocean where the waves of revolution ultimately crash against the rocks of reaction. Zakaria begins by transporting us to the 17th century Netherlands. How did a small, waterlogged swamp become the world's first liberal republic? They chose merchants over monarchs and merit over bloodlines. It was the first liberal revolution. However, Zakaria points out that this shining beacon of progress was fragile. The revolutions that followed in Britain, France, and America gifted humanity with immense freedom and wealth, but they also sowed the seeds of deep resentment among those left behind. The core of this book lies in understanding the mechanics of backlash. The Industrial Revolution saved humanity from destitution, but destroyed communities and turned humans into cogs, spawning the monsters of communism and fascism. What about today? Zakaria argues that our current digital and globalization revolutions are repeating this exact pattern. We are connected by smartphones, yet algorithms have locked us in prisons of confirmation bias. A borderless economy created massive wealth, but drove the working class of the Rust Belt into despair. Zakaria posits that the current global wave of populism and the yearning for strongmen are not anomalies. They are the distress signals and the vengeance of those who feel culturally displaced by rapid change. People crave belonging more than freedom, and they miss the certainty of the past more than they desire the uncertainty of the future. The Trump phenomenon, Brexit, and the global shift to the right are the direct products of this cultural backlash. Particularly compelling is Zakaria's analysis of identity politics. The left focused on identities like race and gender, claiming moral superiority, while the right weaponized traditional identities of nation and religion in response. This clash has turned politics into an uncompromising war. As Zakaria shrewdly observes, we are far more brutal when we fight over culture than when we fight over economics. Yet the book does not end in pessimism. Zakaria holds on to the hope that the pendulum of history will eventually swing back toward progress, but it won't happen automatically. He argues that for progress to survive, we need a warmer liberalism that embraces those who feel alienated. Without slowing down the pace of revolution, understanding the fears of the other side, and rebuilding the broken ladders of opportunity, we are doomed to a cycle of endless regression. Ultimately, this book asks us, are you a beneficiary riding the waves of change or a victim being swept away by them? And how can we rebuild a sense of us in this fractured world? Fareed Zakaria's insights provide the most cool-headed and realistic compass for navigating our chaotic times. We have explored the grand dance of progress and regression in history. Now, let's use NotebookLM to dive deeper into Zakaria's specific historical case studies and his practical solutions for overcoming the current political crisis.
Ever feel like the world is just spinning completely out of control? Well, you're not alone. Today, we're going to dive into Fareed Zakaria's Age of Revolutions to see what history can teach us about our, let's face it, pretty chaotic present.
I mean, just look at the headlines. Does it feel like we're living through a uniquely turbulent time? If you're getting a sense of whiplash from all the constant change and division, you are definitely not imagining things. The world today is being rocked by these really deep and unsettling shifts.
But here's the big question Zakaria asks. Is all this chaos really unprecedented? Or are we just living through the latest chapter of a story that's actually played out many times before? The answer, it might just change how you see everything.
To even begin to answer that, Zakaria argues we have to look back. We need to look at the great realignments of history. So let's dive in.
Zakaria takes us on this whirlwind tour of absolutely world-shaking revolutions. First, you've got the 17th century Dutch Republic, which was way ahead of its time, pioneering religious tolerance and free market capitalism. Then, there's Britain's Glorious Revolution, which set up parliamentary rule and put limits on the power of the king. And of course, the big ones, the French and Industrial Revolutions, which just completely remade the political and economic landscape. These weren't just small changes. We're talking fundamental restructurings of society itself.
So after looking at all that, here's the crucial point, the central idea that runs through the whole book. Progress is never, ever a straight line. Every single major leap forward, whether it's in freedom, technology, or economics, it inevitably creates a reaction, a deep, powerful backlash from people who feel left behind or threatened by all that change. And this slide brilliantly shows how the way change happens matters a lot. Zakaria contrasts the successful revolutions in the Netherlands and Britain, which were gradual, they were organic, they were built from the bottom up, with the French Revolution. In France, radical change was forced from the top down. And what did it lead to? Not lasting liberty, but total social chaos, and eventually a dictatorship. It's a really powerful lesson.
So, how does that history lesson apply to us right now? Well, Zakaria argues that we are currently living through not one, but four massive, interconnected revolutions, and they're all happening at the exact same time.
And here they are. These are the four forces shaking our world to its very core. Globalization, which is weaving together our economies and cultures. Technology, which is totally redefining communication and community. Identity, which is reshaping our politics in profound ways. And geopolitics, with the rise of new global powers. Okay, so now let's take that historical pattern we talked about, progress then backlash, and let's see exactly how it's playing out in each of these four modern revolutions.
First up, globalization. The progress here has been astounding. It's lifted millions of people out of poverty. It's fostered incredible cooperation, letting countries like South Korea totally transform themselves. But the backlash is just as real. We're talking profound economic disruptions, real anxiety over the China shock, and a powerful rise in protectionism and nationalism all over the world.
Next, you've got the technology revolution. On one hand, it's made us all kind of kings, right? We have access to information and tools that were just unimaginable a generation ago. And yet, the backlash is this deep sense of loneliness, of anxiety, and the rise of digital tribalism. We might be more connected on paper than ever before, but studies show we feel more isolated. It's a huge paradox.
Then there's the identity revolution, which has led to some truly historic progress. We've seen a massive expansion of individual rights, especially for women and minorities. But the backlash has been equally powerful, hasn't it? It's led to these intense culture wars, fears around immigration, and a political landscape that feels defined by tribal loyalties more than anything else.
And finally, the geopolitical revolution. The era of overwhelming American dominance, the Pax Americana that came after the Cold War, well, that's over. The rise of new powers is, in a way, a sign of global progress, but the backlash is instability. You have powers like Russia and China that are actively challenging the international system, and that's creating a much more dangerous and unpredictable world for all of us.
So, when you're faced with these four revolutions and their really powerful backlashes, it's easy to feel pessimistic. I get it. But Zakaria argues there is a path forward, but only for willing to learn those lessons from history.
So what's his advice? Well, it's all grounded in that key lesson from Britain versus France. He argues for gradual, organic change. Instead of just imposing radical ideas from the top, we need to persuade people and work within our communities. He urges us to see compromise not as a weakness, but as a real democratic virtue, and to reinvest in those local bonds, family, community, nation that have really started to fray.
So despite all the turbulence, Zakaria believes that if we act wisely, the great liberal experiment can be revived. The system, he says, is resilient, but it requires us to actually defend its core principles and adapt them to the challenges of this wild new age.
Now, what's really interesting is how this quote just captures the core dilemma we're facing. It gets right to the heart of the matter. Liberalism, in that classic sense of individual freedom, is fantastic at breaking things down, freeing us from old traditions, old hierarchies. But its great weakness, it really struggles to build new sources of meaning, community, and belonging in their place.
And that leaves us with the central question for our time, doesn't it? As all these old structures continue to crumble around us, what are we going to build to take their place?
History shows us that progress is possible for sure, but it is not inevitable. The future of this age of revolutions? Well, that's up to us, and that is the challenge Zachariah leaves us with.